So today we're testing the 2011 Tundra. So this has got the 5.7 liter V8. It's an engine that we've come to love. I know it's in your race truck.
Absolutely.
And we've also used a vehicle like this before for Overland Journal testing. We actually had a regular cab long bed, and we really enjoyed the truck. It seemed like a good fit for the reliability side for the typical Overlander. Somebody that wants to put a camper on the back or tow a bigger trailer, something where they need a little bit more payload, because perhaps they have a family and they need to be able to carry 4 people in a larger truck and still have a camper. So even though for my preferences I prefer a smaller vehicle, like we tested the Tacoma the other day and some of the Jeeps, but in this case we know that a lot of people like a full-size truck. And this is Toyota's first offering in the true full-size market. You know, they've had some very successful larger vehicles like the T100 and then the first generation Tundra, which I thought was a great truck. But this is a whole new vehicle for Toyota, and it's a whole new market for them. They've been successful with it, and we're going to find out what it does well and what it doesn't do so well. So we just took the Tundra through our cross-axle obstacle. It gives us a chance to measure frame flex, axle articulation, and then how the traction control system or the locking differentials perform in this kind of environment. And it was interesting with the Tundra because obviously it has a couple things going for it advantage-wise. It's got a nice long wheelbase. It does have quite a bit of rear articulation, but it did reach its limits and the wheels started coming off the ground and quickly it went to wheel spin. So I noticed when you came through there, it took quite a bit of throttle input in order to get a response from the traction control system.
Yeah, I was over 50% into the throttle, waiting for that traction control to come in. You know, I'm used to coming in much earlier, so I think it was delayed a bit, maybe the tuning, but it was very effective. And once I got going and traction control was working, transferring that torque, I just moseyed right through that.
So once the traction control came in, I thought it was effective, but the thing that concerned me was it required so much throttle input. So the traditional driver isn't going to know, once they get that kind of wheel spin, especially for that length of time, they're going to think something's wrong, they're going to back off or hit the brake, which will cancel it, and then they'll fail to climb. So in this case, I was concerned with a very heavy truck with 380 horsepower that requires 50 to 60% throttle input in order to get response from the traction control.
Yeah, I mean, as a driver, I'm used to I have a good feel for when to lift throttle and all that. I definitely was surprised by how much wheel spin I was getting. I'm like, okay, do I need to kind of stop this and get out, slow it down and, get the vehicle slowed down so I don't get so much wheel spin. But I knew the system was going to work. I knew if I put more throttle into it, it was going to, get me through, and that's what it did. But your average driver, you got to be a little careful. You've got to, the driver's not going to know that I need to give it more throttle. So I think there's a little bit of tuning, could be probably a little bit better.
Yeah, so I think the typical steady throttle response we got like out of the A-Track in the Tacoma, or we've seen with some of the Land Rover products, wasn't quite as effective with the Tundra. It required quite a bit more wheel spin, which my concern would be wheel spin, and then either it comes in contact with a rock or high traction surface, and that breaks an axle. So in this case, overall, it made it through the obstacle, but not very elegantly. So for me, overall, I would say that the road performance is very enjoyable, nice to drive. Higher speed dirt performance, really good, no vibration, very predictable handling. I thought that the vehicle stability program did what I expected it to do. When we get into the more technical terrain, the size of the truck becomes a problem, and the traction control isn't as responsive as we'd like it to be. But I would say it's still a class above the typical Chevrolet or Ford truck. Now, where it does fall a little bit behind would be compared to, like, let's say a Power Wagon with the differential locks and everything like that. So in its class, I think it's much better than the average for those characteristics. Compared to the other things that we've tested, not as good.
Yeah, the sequential shift is really fun. If you want to get a lot of wheel spin, maybe you're in the sand dunes, things like that. One thing that I picked up on the vehicle is the steering effort and buildup, just how light it is. Just a little bit vague on, for my liking, but it is also something you get used to. So it's kind of one of those things.
And I think on a big truck, pulling a big load, you don't want a steering that's too sensitive, but I think maybe in this application, it's just a tad too light.
It's just a little bit light, yeah, I agree.
So what's your overall thoughts on the truck?
Well, I'm maybe a little biased to the Tundra, but the power's there, the transmission works really well, love the shift points, towing is, phenomenal. It's not a one-ton truck, but it doesn't need to be for this type of vehicle. And the type of vehicle, if you're towing dirt bikes or even your boat, things like that, it's a perfect truck.
And one of the things for me that I keep coming back to with Toyota, and Joe's application with the race truck and the same engine and the same transmission, now 9 races in, That tells me a lot about the durability and the reliability of this truck. If I'm buying something that's four-wheel drive, that I want to haul my family in, that I possibly want to do longer trips in, fully loaded, this truck has proven that it's durable and that it's reliable. For me, that wins high marks.
Yeah, I mean, to win the Baja 1000 with the same engine, basically drivetrain, 1,100 mile race is, that alone says a lot. But the product speaks for itself.
It does.